We spend so much time obsessing over the spark. You look at movies, music, literature, it is all entirely fixated on that explosive, intoxicating moment of falling in love. But nobody ever talks about what happens on day 3000. What does it actually take to stay in love? Because if you look at the divorce rates, or just the sheer number of people who are miserable in long-term relationships, it is clear we are fundamentally misunderstanding the mechanics of lasting connection. It is not just poetry. It is biology.
It is pure neurochemistry, and it is wild how much we get it wrong. We are culturally conditioned to believe that if the fireworks stop, the love is dead. But what the latest 10-year longitudinal studies are showing is that the fireworks are actually just a biological trick. They are a temporary evolutionary mechanism designed to keep two humans fascinated with each other long enough to establish a bond. That initial phase is fueled by a massive flood of dopamine and norepinephrine. If you look at the brain scan of someone who just fell in love, it looks almost identical to the brain scan of someone high on cocaine. The reward centers are just completely lit up.
That makes so much sense when you think about how obsessive people get in those first few months. You cannot eat, you cannot sleep, you are constantly checking your phone. It is a literal chemical dependency. But you cannot survive in that state forever, right? Your brain would just burn out.
Exactly. It is biologically unsustainable. Your nervous system cannot handle operating at that level of heightened arousal for years. So, somewhere between the 18-month and 3-year mark, the dopamine starts to drop back to baseline. And this is the critical danger zone. This is where people wake up one day, look at their partner, and think, I do not feel the rush anymore. I must be falling out of love. But the 10-year studies reveal something completely different. The couples who actually make it, the ones who report being deeply fulfilled a decade later, they did not lose the love. Their brain chemistry just transitioned. They traded the dopamine for oxytocin and vasopressin.
The cuddle hormones, the bonding chemicals.
Right, but calling them cuddle hormones almost undersells how powerful they are. Oxytocin and vasopressin are the neurochemicals of deep trust, safety, and attachment. They literally rewire your nervous system to view this other person as a permanent extension of your own survival network. The couples who stay together long-term have managed to cultivate an environment where these chemicals are constantly being replenished through daily habits.
Think about the implications of that in our modern culture, though. We live in an era of dating apps, infinite scrolling, and instant gratification. We have built a society that is addicted to the dopamine hit of the new. Swipe right, get a match, feel the rush. The moment the high wears off, you just go back to the app for another hit. We are training an entire generation to be chemically intolerant to the quiet, slow-burn neurochemistry of actual lasting love.
That is a profound way to look at it. We are essentially inducing a cultural dopamine resistance, and the tragedy is, the deep, profound benefits of love only happen after the dopamine fades. When researchers put individuals from successful 10-year relationships into fMRI machines and showed them pictures of their partners, the results were staggering. The ventral tegmental area, the brain's primary reward factory, still lit up, just like it does in new lovers. But the anxiety and panic centers of the brain, the amygdala, went completely quiet.
Wow. So, the passion does not die, the panic dies.
Perfectly stated. The frantic, insecure energy of early love is replaced by a profound neurological calmness. But here is the catch. That transition does not happen automatically. The studies show that the couples who successfully made this transition did not just get lucky. They engaged in very specific behavioral patterns that kept the neural pathways of connection alive. It comes down to something researchers call bids for connection.
I have read about this. It is the micro-interactions, right? It is not about the grand gestures or the expensive vacations. It is the boring, everyday stuff.
It is the entirely mundane moments that dictate the survival of the relationship. A bid for connection is any attempt to get your partner's attention, affection, or support. It can be as simple as looking out the window and saying, "Look at that weird bird." In that fraction of a second, the partner has a choice. They can turn away by ignoring it or grunting dismissively, or they can turn towards by stopping what they are doing, looking out the window and saying, "Oh yeah, what kind of bird is that?"
It sounds so trivial. You are telling me a marriage survives or fails based on a bird outside a window?
It is not about the bird. It is about the data point you are feeding into your partner's nervous system. When you turn towards them, you are sending a microdose of oxytocin. You are signaling, "I hear you, you matter, we are connected." The 10-year studies tracked these micro-interactions. The couples who ended up divorcing only turned towards each other's bids about 33% of the time. The couples who were still happily together after a decade, they turned towards each other 86% of the time.
86%. That is a massive difference. It means they are constantly, almost subconsciously, reinforcing the bond. It is like they are continuously weaving a safety net out of these tiny, invisible threads. And if you miss a few threads, no big deal. But if you stop weaving altogether, the moment real stress hits, the whole net just completely falls apart.
And the physical reality of that net is mind-blowing. When you study the physiology of these successful long-term couples, you see a phenomenon called co-regulation. Their autonomic nervous systems actually sync up. If they sit in a room together, even without touching, their heart rates will begin to align. Their breathing patterns will synchronize. Their cortisol levels, the stress hormones, drop simply by being in the same physical proximity. The brain has literally mapped the partner's presence as a biological baseline for safety.
That is almost supernatural. But it is just pure, raw biology. Your body is essentially saying, I cannot fully regulate my own nervous system without this other organism, which is beautiful, but also terrifying. Because what happens when that person is gone? What happens when there is a breakup or a death?
The system goes into absolute shock. That is why heartbreak is not just a poetic concept, it is a severe physiological trauma. The brain enters a state of withdrawal that mirrors heroin withdrawal. The cortisol spikes, the immune system tanks, and the physical pain centers of the brain activate. The brain registers the loss of the partner as a literal threat to physical survival.
Which makes the act of committing to someone an incredible evolutionary gamble. You are willingly handing over the keys to your autonomic nervous system to another human being. You are giving them the power to either regulate you or completely destroy you.
It is the ultimate vulnerability, and perhaps that is why the modern world struggles with it so much. To build that 10-year bond, to reach that state of physiological syncing, you have to be willing to walk through the fire of vulnerability. You have to endure the uncomfortable transition from the dopamine high to the quiet reality of everyday life. You have to choose to put your phone down and look at the bird out the window, thousands and thousands of times.
It requires a level of intentionality that we just are not taught. We are taught that love is something that happens to you. You fall in it. But looking at all this data, looking at the neurochemistry and the daily habits, it is clear that lasting love is not a state of being. It is an action. It is a daily, deliberate practice of building a shared nervous system.
And it is a practice of constant rediscovery. Because the person you married at 25 is not the same person at 35. Their brain has changed. Their cells have regenerated. Their worldview has shifted. The successful couples in these studies did not just tolerate each other's changes. They remained fiercely curious about them. They allowed their partners to evolve, and they updated their internal maps of who that person was. They never assumed they knew everything about the other person.
That is the trap, isn't it? The illusion of familiarity. You wake up next to someone for 3,000 days, and you trick yourself into thinking you have read the whole book. You stop asking questions. You stop observing. And the moment curiosity dies, the connection starts to wither.
Precisely. Curiosity is the engine of neuroplasticity in a relationship. When you ask a genuine question, when you try to understand a new facet of your partner's mind, you are literally forging new neural pathways. You are keeping the brain's engagement with the partner dynamic and alive. It prevents the relationship from becoming a stagnant biological habit and keeps it a living, breathing ecosystem.
It is fascinating to think about where this leaves us as a society. If we know the exact formula, if we have the brain scans, the hormone profiles, the behavioral data of what makes love last, why is it still so hard? Maybe it is because the truth is profoundly unglamorous. It is not a movie montage. It is paying attention. It is managing your own ego. It is doing the quiet, invisible work when nobody is watching, and when the initial chemical high is long gone.
It is the hardest work a human being can do. But the reward is a level of psychological and physical peace that you simply cannot achieve any other way. You are building a sanctuary in a chaotic world.
A sanctuary built on 86% of turn towards bids and a steady drip of oxytocin. It really makes you evaluate every interaction you have. Are you building the sanctuary, or are you tearing it down? It is a heavy thought to leave on, but a necessary one. We have to stop chasing the spark and start learning how to tend the fire.